This week on Straight from the Source, our guest is Erin Resner. In fact, Erin, I don't know if you know this, you are the very first returning guest.
Oh, okay, that's exciting.
Yeah, we had you on initially because you're a Redding City Councilmember, and now we are getting into the June primary, and you're running for Shasta County Supervisor.
Yes.
And I know you ran back in 2022.
I did.
And now you're going, it was very close. Very close back then.
I lost by 90 votes.
Wow. Yeah, how big is the district?
We're hoping in a great scenario, it would be that we have 5,000 votes or so that come in. Shasta County historically has low voter turnout for primaries, so it would be fantastic if 5,000 people showed up to vote.
It surprises me to hear that, right? That a voter turnout is low, because I look at Shasta County as a county that really cares about fair elections and the voice of the people.
We are that sort of community, but I think that oftentimes people are in the middle of their lives, and national news gets a lot of public attention, and people really want to weigh in on those issues, obviously, because it's the president or Congress or the Senate. And I think that honestly people just forget. And the election is the same as the last week of school for many kids. And so I think that parents sometimes just forget that that's coming up because it's in an off time.
So this actually brings up something that is really a hot topic, of course, in Shasta County, which is the way that we run elections. I know Measure B is going to be on the ballot, I believe. Is it though in June? In June, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if Measure B talks about mail-in voting and whether or not that would still be okay, but I think that was something that people always have said, well, mail-in voting, we don't trust it, but then others say, well, that's the only way I'm going to vote, realistically, because I can't take time off of work. I can't take time off of childcare. What are your thoughts about, say, first mail-in voting specifically?
I love an absentee ballot. Mm-hmm. I voted for the beginning of my adult life as an absentee ballot voter. I have younger kids now, and I really like them to be engaged in the process, and they think that it's very fun, so I often go turn my ballot in now in person, and I like that. I think that everybody probably has some sort of election reform idea that they feel like that would be useful. So it'll be really interesting to see how the voters show up and what they think and what they voice specifically on Measure B.
Okay. So aside from whether or not there's an election code issue with that, what do you think of the things that Measure B suggests, the changes?
Inherently, I, as a person, love the idea of voter ID. And I think that we've had this occur twice in the last year. So there was Measure A, and then there is now Measure B. But both of these are a great example of community engagement, where the citizens in a community went out and they got signatures of something they wanted to bring to the ballot, which is the best example of democracy, because there are a group of people who all signed saying, hey, this is something we'd like to consider. And then the voters actually get to make that decision. So I actually think that it's a really great display of democracy at work. And we'll see how it goes, because it's really not up to me. It is really up to voters.
It's an interesting idea, right? Because I was talking to Clint Curtis, the Shasta County Registrar of Voters, just last week, right? And I brought it up with him, like, aren't you worried, though, if voters approve it, but because if certain aspects of it violate state election code, then what if Shasta County sued, and then it's the taxpayers' money, right? And he brought up marijuana and how the state of California approved marijuana laws that were in violation of the federal government, and then that kind of set the tone for change, and they got away with it. Like, do you think that could be what happens in Shasta County with this Measure B, that maybe the state will just back off and just let it be?
I don't know that at this stage of the game that I can really speak into how it is that the state will respond.
Yeah.
We've seen the state be hands-off on certain things, and we've seen the state get involved. So I think that it will just be interesting to see the way in which that it plays out. And if I'm really honest, I don't think that it is the position of an elected official to specifically weigh in on measures that the voters have signed to get on a ballot, because it is up to them.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. So right now, Redding City Council, what is it that maybe over the last year or so in your time in that role that you feel the most proud of, and that you're putting forth to the voters of Shasta County as an example of why you'd be kind of ready for the next, I guess you could call it a step up?
So I should probably address that running for this position for District 1 was definitely not on my bingo card for 2026. I only joined the race because Kurt Swanson left the race, and a really sad sad to me, and turn of events, that he didn't want to engage in the nastiness and the vitriolic nature that has become Shasta County politics. And so I felt really bummed in this scenario where a good person with great ideas left the race, specifically because of how divisive it can be. And so I knew that with there only being 6 months until the primary, that someone who could raise money for an election and somebody who had the ability to go out to community members and form a team that we could stand up really quickly so that voters had the ability of someone to choose, because that was prior to Mr. Gallardo entering the race. And I felt like it was really needed for Shasta County to have an option of more than one person, because I don't believe that they've been getting what they deserve in the last 4 years in Kevin Cry. And in terms of the Redding City Council, I'm very excited that we we approved a contract with a company called Circle 6. So they're an outside efficiency firm who comes in and reviews all of the departments to find out where is it that we can better perform, where are we maybe have a duplication of services that need to be addressed. Do we need to add people or software or systems in certain departments, or maybe remove them from other departments, so that government can be the most efficient that it possibly is, because that's our duty as elected officials, is to make sure that we're offering them an efficient form of government.
And you're starting to see the results of this already, right? We have some feedback at this point?
We have not received an official report yet from them. That will come to council soon, but we are seeing the fruit of that they are coming in and interviewing staff and looking through different departments. And I actually think, which was something in the beginning that maybe people were concerned about, well, what is this going to look like?
Yeah.
And I got a lot of news questions about, are you going to cut a ton of people? And what does this look like for services? Are you going to be cutting a ton of services? But I think in that process and having Circle 6 be present across the city, I think that people are really excited about what that outcome is going to be. And I think that they, as well as the entire council, are looking forward to having some feedback.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I think that anybody who pays taxes, they know that they want to see their money get spent on a way that benefits the community, benefits their life. But we also, you're right, it's like that idea of, well, people's jobs are going to get cut. That's the first thing to go, is positions, right? Especially with more AI available now. But you don't necessarily anticipate it being about layoffs.
I don't anticipate it being the only option that comes. Everything, I believe, is on the table, and I think that council has said that repeatedly.
Yeah.
Everything is on the table. Our goal is to figure out how we can be the most efficient. How can we be the most efficient? How can we leverage the resources that we actually have with a limited amount of dollars? Because what has historically worked is just simply not going to work in the next 20 years. The world is evolving, and so how can we still share with the community and provide services that we need to in the best, most efficient way possible?
Based on all of your knowledge and your time as a city council member, do you have an idea of where there are some areas where money is being spent that kind of needlessly, or too much money is being allocated?
Not at this point in time. The thing that is really strange about government is that the way that we have it set up is inherently less efficient than in the private sector. As a business owner for over 20 years, if I identify a problem, I can identify the solution, and it takes one phone call or email from myself to change that.
Right.
But that's not how government works, and in all honesty, it doesn't work like that because the private sector option would allow way too much power to the people who are elected, and it doesn't allow the community to engage in that process. So it inherently sort of takes a little while. We identify a problem, we maybe have a public hearing, the community gets to weigh in, we hear from them so that we can best represent them, and then we maybe put it on the agenda, have a discussion about it, and then make a decision.
Yep.
So inherently that sort of takes a little bit longer,
Yeah.
and it is the most fair way to do that because I think that the public deserves that level of engagement.
Okay. Well, you mentioned that a big reason, well, really the main reason you decided to run in this primary is because you wanted voters to have another choice. You mentioned Kevin Cry, who is in office right now. Is there anything specific, though, about decisions that have been made for this district that you think were incorrect or you would have done differently?
Absolutely. Specifically surrounding mental health. The opposition that my opponent ran, very public opposition to the True North project, which would have brought in tens of millions of dollars back from the state into our community, that had that grant and application was evidence-based. It was a locked facility. It would have meant construction jobs. It also would have meant just mental health access for everyday members of our community and the entire rural North State, because that was a collaborative project amongst multiple rural counties. That in and of itself was unacceptable and frankly a slap in the face to struggling families. And then to back another project that came just weeks later that was frankly a fraudulent project that luckily has been pulled. But to say that we were going to give $2 million of taxpayer funding from the opioid money to that specific project that hadn't been researched. And frankly, I don't think
Which
that he
project
read
was
it. This is the Family Dynamics Project in Anderson. The Family Dynamics Project in Anderson was not a locked facility. It did not have the backing of law enforcement. There were strong concerns from the community. And you had a supervisor who sat up there and said, oh, he's a good guy. I believe he was referring to Les Baugh. We're friends. I've known him a long time, and that's why he felt comfortable with a project. That frankly is unacceptable, and because I like someone is not a reason why I'm ever going to choose a project. I am a data-based person who is not going to pick pet projects for my friends, and I want to bring real solutions to this community. I also am someone who is going to be frank and honest, and you've witnessed that in City Council in 2024 when I ran for this partial term, sharing about my concerns about what was on the horizon for the city of Redding with their budget, that it was one of the reasons I ran for city council. It's the same scenario at the county. You have a supervisor in my opponent who is saying they're in the best situation they've ever been in and is touting around town, wow, we're in such a great financial situation. However, you have another supervisor in Matt Plummer who is very well educated, very data-based, who is not up for election, who actually is reminding the community we have a structural deficit of almost $50 million at Shasta County. There are multiple holes within this budget, and we have some serious problems at the county on the horizon. And so that tale of two budgets, while one person is in an election cycle and one person is not, is something that I just won't engage in. I will always be an honest member with this community. I will tell you the truth because I think that that's what our community deserves.
Do you think that what's happening right now with Redding and this efficiency study could be something that you would bring forward at the county level?
Yes, it's actually one of the things on my list that I would like to bring to the board in the first 90 days. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same company, although I am enjoying the results and the process with them. But we need to have an efficiency study done at the county because the same things are true. The things that have worked for the last 30 years are not going to work the next 30 years into the future. how things are funded are not going to continue to work in the same sort of way or work for the community the same sort of way. We need to get creative and we need to make data-based decisions, which is why I'd love to bring an efficiency group, an efficiency firm to the board in my first 90 days.
Okay, and back to the mental health topic that we were just talking about. So that one project, the True North project, so that did not work out. It's dead in its tracks. Is there any possibility of reviving it, or are there any other offers or opportunities out there?
I actually think that this is a great way to remind everybody how important it is that your elected official is a good collaborator. Because in that True North project, there were lots of supervisors and lots of other counties that wanted to work around that project. And so those supervisors are reaching out, those supervisors are wanting to make connections, and we're having conversations about what else can we do, because the rural North State is at a disadvantage. Those tax dollars regularly go to bigger cities, they regularly go to Southern California, and so it takes all of us supervisors who represent rural areas communicating and connecting and finding solutions, and I am excited about those discussions, and I look forward to what it is that we will put forward next.
Now, you've been in Shasta County most of your life, right?
Yes, outside of college. I grew up here. I have raised a family here. My husband and I have been business owners for over 20 years. We own Dutch Bros Coffee in Shasta County. We've employed thousands of young people, and I'm really proud of the impact that we have had on our community. Like you said, I grew up here and I want to give back. And so this community has blessed me, and I hope that I can continue to bless this community by serving them.
So let me ask you a little bit, just from your experience of spending your life here, the mental health crisis, right? The need for a campus like True North would have offered. I mean, I know it's a nationwide issue. It's not unique to Shasta County, but is there anything in Shasta County that you think is like, gosh, this could be connected to it? Or why are things the way they are?
We have double the scores for ACEs. We have terrible statistics for suicide rates in young people and in adults. We have generational levels of addiction. We have services and situations that really need to be addressed. And that's going to take a collaborative effort so that we can tackle those issues, those like systemic issues. I think that we all can identify them at this point, but now we all have to work together because it is such a dynamic problem.
Yeah.
It's not a one size fits all. And so I think bringing all of those experts and nonprofits together, communicating between nonprofits and public and private partnerships, I do believe that there are some solutions and we can start rowing in the right direction, but we need elected officials who can collaborate.
Okay, mental health is just one piece, right, of all the different health issues. I know we could talk about opioids, we could talk about drugs, but also just the lack of doctors. I mean, I had to drive to Woodland the other day for a doctor's appointment that you would think would be just a simple, oh, there's a specialty person in your area. Nope, 2-hour drive, basically. I know that there has been talk of potentially a medical school. What are your thoughts of that?
I love all of the very creative ideas. I'm doing a lot of research and reading what is the best and brightest idea, having conversations with folks who may have solutions and can identify them. I think that the northern region really, if it puts its mind to something, can make anything happen. But it's a real issue.
Yeah.
Not being able to bring in providers is a real concern for rural communities. And one of the things that we can do as elected officials is create an environment where people want to live, where when hospitals are trying to hire specialists, that they and their trailing spouse Google us and see that this is not only a beautiful community, but it's somewhere I want to raise a family. And I think that we can present ourselves better online and make ourselves a more competitive option because we do have great schools. We do have great people. This is a beautiful place to live and to raise a family. I just think that we need to do a better job of essentially selling and marketing ourselves.
Yeah, it's so funny that you said that because I always just being a reporter, whenever I have a doctor's appointment, whether it's here or somewhere else, I ask doctors, why do you think that there is a healthcare provider shortage in our area? Every single one has said the same thing. Like, you put yourself through medical school, you kind of want to live, you want a great place to live. And like, no offense to where we live, like they'll say that to me, no offense to your hometown, but like, but just like, we want to go to really nice restaurants or, have really good schools and that sort of thing. And I think to myself, like, well, I'm from LA, the place that maybe a lot of doctors think of as like a mecca. And it's like, I chose Chico because I think the schools are better. I think the neighborhoods are better. I think there's no traffic. Like, how do we get the message out to these doctors? Like, this is the place to be. Have you ever seen Lake Shasta? Like, have you seen the houseboats out on the water there? Like,
and you really can have access, especially with the flights out of Redding, to so many places. You can access the globe, really.
Totally.
And we have beautiful places to hike. We have beautiful places to ski. We have beautiful places to float on the lake or float down the river. We have these wonderful places, but we need to market them better. And that will take all of us in the rural North State rowing in the same direction and really telling the story of Northern California in the best way possible, because I agree, which is obviously why I choose to live here. This is an incredible place.
Right. So that kind of brings up something with Shasta County specifically that, as I told you, the Registrar of Voters was here last week, and I asked him, how did you find Shasta County? And he said, he heard about us on the news, unfortunately for the wrong reasons, right? Like, to quote him, as Shasta County was a mess. Now, he was speaking specifically about elections issues. However, I think that Shasta County does have this reputation where its local leaders don't really get along with each other for the most part. How are you, if you're elected, how are you going to interact? How are you going to kind of work to overcome that?
It matters to me that all voices and perspectives are heard. I learned that very early in my leadership at Dutch Bros, that someone sharing a misstep by someone else or a mistake that had been made was really an opportunity to have dialogue and conversation and see where we could build or fix a situation, and that builds repair. So you have seen me on Redding City Council be an example of what it looks like to be an adult in the room, to make eye contact with every single person who's coming to speak at the podium during public comment, because it matters whether you agree with me or disagree with me. And I'm going to ask a variety of sources, our community, experts, all voices, so that when I make a decision, it can be a wise, thoughtful decision. And I'm going to continue to ask for feedback because it simply matters and it makes me a better leader. And then I get to hear the voices of what people want to do because my job is to represent them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because like we have district-based elections, right? So you're representing just District 1 theoretically, but everybody in Shasta County is represented by their board. So.
Exactly. I may be elected by District 1, but what is helpful for District 1 is also helpful for District 5. And we need to be thinking about this holistic approach of how do we take care of Shasta County and best set up all of the members of Shasta County for the future, long term. We need to be thinking about not what does it look like 2 years out, but what does it look like 10 years out or 20 years out, and making very wise decisions for what that looks like in 20 years.
Can I ask you what your thoughts are about, talking about public safety? Because I know that there was an issue recently, the sheriff wanted to have this like rehabilitation facility, right? I think it was the city of Redding that said, well, we have a property you can have. But because it could potentially be bad news for the people who live specifically right there, one specific district could be adversely affected potentially, that didn't move forward, right?
The facility is still, at the moment, moving forward. There are some lawsuits from the neighborhood that have been brought forward. So maybe that's what you're referring to in terms of there's some litigation surrounding that.
I had thought the county supervisor, I thought it was Chris Kellstrom, I thought he told me that at this point that it was a no, but I just got back from Japan, so maybe I missed some things. But so that sort of project, like I guess what I'm asking is like how do How do we make that sort of work, where there's something that's really, it's good for the whole, but maybe something that wouldn't be good for your district, but it's like a sacrifice you have to make?
The best thing that we can do as supervisors is make sure that we're listening to the concerns of our community as a whole. And then if there are specific neighborhoods that are impacted, that we are listening to what their concerns are and figuring out what do they think that we should do about a alternative custody facility or a rehabilitation facility? What do they think that a campus should look like? What would make them feel safe? What would make them support a project? What sort of solutions do they have for what really is a jail problem and a corrections problem that the sheriff is attempting to fix in that way. And I liked the last proposal that he showed me because he listened to what they said and he put agriculture along the edge of that 90 acres that's down there because he listened to them not wanting bright lights, and he is now suggesting I believe it's a large concrete wall of some sort, so that there would be some blockades between the property and neighborhoods, or potentially moving where it is that a bus stop is to, maybe a half mile down the road. But that sort of dialogue is the thing that is the most important, listening to our community members, because we're going to naturally all have concerns, and those are very valid concerns. And so when we sit around the table and we listen to each other, we have the opportunity to come up with something that everybody can get on board with, because I think that every member of our community would say that the jail and corrections is an issue and it needs a solution.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So you talked about a 90 days, first 90 days plan. What are some other things that top your list?
Hashing out the budget
Okay.
of where it is that we can make solutions.
And that would be kind of maybe starting with an efficiency study?
I would start with the efficiency study.
Okay.
So bringing to the board, I would hope that I would have a majority support in going through an efficiency study, hiring an efficiency firm to come in. That would probably take 90 days to 6 months to really, the county is very large, to come up with what it is that would be the best plan moving forward, and then to start moving in that direction, so that we can then identify what solutions can be made surrounding the budget long term.
Okay, and then what's next? Other things on that list?
I would love to come up with some solutions surrounding mental health. So that will look like collaboration of rural communities and rural counties, of how we can collaborate, what dollars we can go after, who wants to continue to work on that effort, and really putting together some great ideas and then presenting those to the community.
Okay. And you talked about the different contributing factor, like things, that happen early on in childhood. And these are things, would it be just kind of breaking it into committees and trying to figure out, like, certain board members would get with experts and then just bring back ideas? You don't have like a laid out plan of exactly what to do, right?
I do not have a laid out plan of exactly how it is that I would do each of those things, though I have some ideas that I would like to flesh out. But I do not believe or identify myself as the one-stop solution for everything. I do believe that there are people who need to weigh in to those ideas. And like I said, I'm excited about how some of those ideas are coming to, or are going to come to fruition.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about that effort, because I do think that bringing together all of the people in one room who have ideas and solutions and expertise, that we can come up with some really great ideas.
Okay. What other public safety ideas could there be? Because we talked about, having an extra space that maybe rehabilitates people rather than just, locks them up and then releases them, give them a leg up to contribute to society somehow. But there are other public safety issues. Is there anything to you that you'd like to tackle?
I would love to make sure that we are continuing to support the Day Reporting Center.
Okay.
So some of the wonderful work that is being done there is that probation identifies folks who are coming out of addiction, really, because they've landed themselves in jail. They've been arrested for whatever reason. and they are identified as a really good candidate for the day reporting center, which means that they're checking in every day, and they have a probation officer, but they're working a program that essentially teaches them how to be a contributing member of society. Because one of the things that we can identify, because over half of the people in that program have an ACEs score of over 5, 10 is the max, that there are some members of our community that have just not been taught the foundations of communication or societal norms or what it looks like to trust people and to move through life in that sort of way. And I'm really excited about the statistics that they have in terms of recidivism. So the people who fall back into crime, that if someone makes it through their program, if someone makes it to level 3, it's like a 95% success rate. So those are some programs that I think are working really well. And if we can continue to support those programs at the county, I think that will have a direct impact on our community and on public safety, because some of those low-level offenders will now not be committing those sort of like what we call petty or nuisance crimes, the ones that impact our like daily lives.
Yeah, okay. Well, right now you're a business owner, you're a Redding City Councilmember, you're a mom, you're an athlete.
Yeah.
Being a county supervisor could potentially take up even more of your time. How are you going to make space for that?
I think that we make time for the things that matter to us. As a mom, we live that out on a regular basis. Yeah. We carve out time for the things that matter and the things that are really important. And so I'm very intentional about where my time is spent. And to be completely honest, I have a really, really incredible team. My Dutch Bro staff is really remarkable, and I'm so blessed to have them. But I have a really great support system. I have a great team, and we've sort of learned what matters and what works, and so we have really great habits and great routines. And like you said, I say yes to the things that help me function really well. And so I stay active and I stay really present as a mom, and sometimes that looks like reading at night, but also I really like that. I am a science nerd by education, so I love to sit and read through the research or reports or what have you.
Remind me what you studied in school.
My background is in biology.
Okay.
Yeah, my background is in biology, so I like that sort of data.
Yeah.
I like figuring out how we got somewhere, what was the catalyst to something, and how has it turned out, and what are potential solutions that we could come up with there.
Yeah, interesting. How did that turn into owning Dutch Bros?
I'm not sure that we have an hour and a half for that, but long term, I really wanted to be an orthodontist, and at the very end of college, I made an about-face pivot because I was already running all of our finances and such for Dutch Bros while I was also going to school. And I decided that the thing I loved about orthodontia is making people feel good about and giving them a great smile.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, that was the thing I had been doing for almost 3 years with Dutch Bros, is that I had the ability to impact somebody's day with a smile.
Yeah.
And to give them a smile and to impact their life. And in my opinion, that impacts an entire community on a regular basis during what we like to call an all-shop meeting. So when there's 200 or so staff, one of the things that we say to them is that the impact that they have on their community is so much greater than they actually perceive it to be. Because when I give you a solid interaction and I impact your day so that you're a little bit happier leaving and you know that you mattered to one person, well, then you go out into the community and there's a ripple effect on everybody else who you interact with, because you're just a little bit more of a ray of sunshine out in the community. And when we do that for thousands of people, you really have the ability to impact just the perception within the community.
Yeah, I love that. I have it written on my bathroom mirror, like, how can I contribute today, right? Because it's just that small thought. It's like we all impact each other, right? So it's your choice. Do you want to make a positive difference or bring people down?
Yeah, we don't know the things that other people are carrying. It's not like we go to the grocery store and we see the person in line written on their forehead, maybe what was difficult about their day or what's going on with a kiddo that they have or in their job. We just don't know that. So being able to simply be polite, sometimes that's as simple as smiling. Sometimes that's paying someone a compliment or just being kind.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to ask you about the changing world that we live in, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing so much with AI, and I have to say that I resisted for a while, and then I started using it, and I can see huge benefits with this tool, right, as an assistant. But it's quite interesting when it comes to county government, for example. Two different things. We talked about efficiency. Do you think that AI could be something that plays into efficiency at the county level? And then also, do you have any concerns about the impact of AI on trust in a county that is already a little bit distrustful when it comes to its government? Maybe not specifically locally, but in general.
I think that that's a healthy level of distrust because you don't want to put all of your faith in a robot. That would be silly.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I think that there is a balance and a dance there. And so I think that it really matters that we are looking at how can we leverage AI as an asset, like you were saying, in an efficiency sort of way. Where can we use it in an efficiency sort of way so that we can give more time back perhaps to members of staff who maybe are doing something that is extremely tedious, like putting together a staff report and formatting it a certain sort of way. Mm-hmm. And so maybe there are tools that they can use to format it a certain sort of way that maybe save 2 hours of their time, and then they're going back through and making edits and correcting it. But we then gave that employee 2 hours of their time back to work on something else that was potentially would bring great value.
Yeah.
Those are the ways in which that AI is going to be helpful into the future. But like I said, that's a healthy level we need to have a healthy level of distrust in a robot.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about that as a mother, making sure that they were just being smart. They were just being smart and thoughtful, that there isn't any sort of blanket yes that we are giving, that there are safety measures that are always in place, that there are backup measures that are in place, and how it is, because it is going to be this new evolution of the world. And I think that it's our job as leaders, it is our job as leaders to make sure that we're doing that in a thoughtful way so that we are thinking about, if we say yes to this in this moment, what does that look like 10 years from now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How does that continue to evolve and play out? So that's why I'm saying it's really important that leaders are making decisions that are long-term.
Yeah, that seems to be a common theme for you. It's like not just what this means for this thing right now acutely, but the long-term plan, 10-year plan.
Yeah. And I think that that's become more impactful for me, especially looking at where the city of Redding is and looking back at decisions that were made by leaders potentially in the 90s that a little bit felt like kicking the can down the road, or the decisions that were politically motivated, likely because they didn't maybe want to be completely open about what that would look like 20 years down the road. And so they made short-term decisions, and some of those now are falling on local elected leaders now in terms of things like roads and how we take care of public safety or replacement for parks, those sort of long-term things.
Yeah, okay. Well, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you really want voters to consider?
I really want them to ask themselves whether or not they're in a better situation. 4 years ago, Kevin Cry promised to lower their taxes and to fight against taxes, and we haven't witnessed that. He didn't fight against Measure A. They don't have lower taxes than they did. I think that if we asked everybody, do you have more money in your pocket now than you did 4 years ago? Have you seen progress in regards to a jail? They haven't seen that. Have you seen progress in regards to mental health? They haven't seen that. They've actually witnessed opposition. And it matters. Is what they have now what they deserve? Absolutely not. And so I want to ask them whether or not they're in a better position now than they were 4 years ago.
Okay, and then anything else, because you have two opponents in this. We know that one of them is the incumbent, but then there's somebody else who hasn't had a political role yet. Is there anything about Gallardo, Richard
yeah.
Gallardo, that you could say that you would offer that he wouldn't?
I'm going to offer you reasonable, logic-based solutions. There is a difference between creating an idea and something being ideological, saying in a perfect world, this is the way that would work. But a majority of the world is gray, and there are these sort of nuances at play. Like I said about mental health, that's dynamic. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution for all of life's problems. And so the difference between Gallardo and myself is that I'm going to present to the community a very reasonable, logical, balanced solution.
Okay. All right. Erin Resner, thank you
you
so much. Thanks for
you.
being here.
Thanks for listening today. I decided to offer this podcast after enough of you let me know that you wanted a deeper dive into certain stories than you get on our TV broadcasts. We elect certain people to represent our voice, but who are they really? My hope is that this podcast answers that question. I love your feedback, and I want to know who you'd like to hear from next. Just fill out that comment section and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Spotify.